As we've said before, Josh was an English major at Amherst College, which means he knows a lot of big words. But don't worry, I have an AI translator ready to go if we don't know what he's saying.
This is The Back Nine with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Back Nine. Hello, English major.
I just want to compliment you on such a resplendent prolegomenon for a couple of loquacious rhetoricians such as ourselves.
My translator's not working.
And by the way, the H in Amherst is silent. It's with the college.
Amherst.
Get it right. And you don't say Hamilton. You say Hamilton, or that's the Hebrew way of saying Hamilton.
Yeah.
But Amherst,
Yeah,
they're picky
it's
about
silent.
that up there.
Okay.
Yeah. If we're going to
Wait, so my daughter went to UMass Amherst?
No, because the town is Amherst. You had that right. So it's UMass Amherst. But at the college on the other side of town, the H is silent.
All right, that makes no
The
sense.
school
I never knew that.
Yeah. The town, you say the H. The college, you don't say the H.
I never knew that. Okay,
Yeah.
We'll move on now. And we're excited about this show. We've brought on some great guests. A lot of them have ties to our broadcast years in this first season. A lot of them have ties to Buffalo. This one is no exception. Jody Jackson comes to us. Jody was
Briefly in
one
Buffalo.
of
She was briefly
in Buffalo, but literally I was the sports director and she was maybe my first hire there. And we brought a female
good
into the
hire.
sport. Great hire.
Yeah.
Brought a female into the sports department, into the sports world in local TV when it's hard to even imagine this. It was like a cutting edge thing to do. I'm just telling
It was.
you. Like it was
Yeah.
literally a cutting edge thing to do. And Buffalo was always the cutting edge of broadcasting, really, with the kind of stuff. Pam Oliver came out of Buffalo. There's a lot of really big names that have come out of there. And Jody was no exception because she's a superstar now out in Phoenix. And Jody, thanks for joining us.
Gosh, this is going down memory lane with you guys. And yeah, first of all, just the back nine. So you guys are forcing me to admit that this is the back nine, right?
I know,
The
for all
best
of
is
us.
yet to come, right? Maybe, hopefully. But you guys look great. You haven't changed. And Dennis, I could maybe ask you, like, thanks for hiring me or what? I don't know what caught your eye there. I think there were a few candidates and I went up to Buffalo from South Florida, Miami. I was not born in Miami, but Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale area. And I was just so happy it was like a big market. You know what I mean? Like it had pro sports. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to get this, but it's better than some of these little tiny places. And that was my big break. So thank you. Such a great experience. I mean, now that I teach students and I've mentored a lot of people, some of them have actually had bad experiences in their first job and have gotten out of the business. And it's just crazy to me because you guys were all amazing. Van Miller was there at that time. You had just taken over for Van as the sports director. So he was just doing a little bit of TV. And Paul Peck and just everyone in the market was very welcoming and it was fantastic.
We had a good time. And I remember you were in all sports, but you became like the hockey person. And it was the glory days of the Sabres being really good. And we did a lot of traveling. You did a lot of traveling. Great memories that night, kind of great memories that 99 Stanley Cup final when we were watching in
Until
the crease.
the very end.
I remember watching that with Jody from like the 200 level. We had tried to make our way partway down to watch it from a lower level than the press box because we wanted to be able to scramble down to ice level if anything happened, if the goal was scored, and it was obviously scored. Everybody knows the story. We don't need to get into it too deeply, but I do have those memories, Jody, of watching hockey with you and being on those road trips. And you were a pro. It was no secret. It was our loss when you got a job. What, 2 years is all you spent in Buffalo before you got the job?
2.5, a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And you've
but
been in Phoenix now?
Yeah.
For a while, right? You've seen a lot there.
Because I didn't even know hockey when I got the job. I was at a sports radio station here, my first job out of college in the business. And I had to learn the Florida Panthers came to town and I would read the hockey news and talk to the stringers that I would have call in for our nightly like NHL preview. And I'm just like absorbing it all. And then to go and to get that chance, which was awesome to really talk hockey. And then I really think it helped me because the person that was instrumental in hiring me out here, Mike Connolly, was a hockey guy himself from Minnesota. He's now in LA, still running regional networks. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And us with our cowboy hats on, I think that in color. Yeah, it was really fun until the end. And if I remember correctly, I want to say, I've always said to people, James Patrick, I think hit the crossbar in the earlier
He did.
overtime.
Yeah,
I think it was
great memory.
Yeah.
Brett Hull scored in the third overtime, was it?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I want to say in the first or second, it could have ended in a better way.
Yeah. Half an inch lower, and that puck's in the net from James
Yeah.
Patrick.
Yeah.
Back at that time, Jody, I think you were the first, if I remember this correctly. And then the station I worked for hired Carrie Sayers, who has been on the podcast. There's another woman at the ABC affiliate. And as Dennis alluded to, it was early in women being seen as equals in that industry. What were there times when it was difficult for you, when either people who were our peers or people who were in locker rooms, the people that we were covering, that made it difficult, or that were not used to seeing women in those areas at the time?
Josh, I really don't remember that at all in Buffalo. And I don't feel like I had a difficult time. There were times getting in radio, walking in as a then 21, 22-year-old. I think when I arrived in Buffalo, I was about to turn 23, or I just turned 23. Those first two times I remember in South Florida, and there's part of you just looking around, okay, who's going to, you're new here, not to mention a female in a male dominated, and like you said, back then, mostly male work environment. But I don't remember having any of those challenges. And again, credit to everyone, not only at WIVB and Dennis and that whole crew, but just everyone with the teams and everything. I think players were still getting used to it a little bit. I know now with our manager here, Diamondbacks manager, Tori Lavello, who, of course, the D-backs had a great run this year, surprising everyone going to the World Series. When Tori showed up here in 2017, I walked up to him and said, hey, I covered you when you were at the Bisons. And he goes, I remember you. And he goes, you were a pioneer. And I was like, I was a pioneer. And I guess he's right in a way, because if I believe the timing, I was hired by WIB and then Terry and then Kathy Gerhardt at the other station. And I feel, I'm not saying that just because I was hired, these other women were hired, but it certainly seemed to coincide with the timing. Right. Maybe it was seen as, hey, look, this can work. Or now we know there's women can certainly do the job. And we see women in all types of roles now. But I just am thankful. I've heard some horror stories from other women through the years. There's a colleague of mine out here that was a writer for many years and teaches at Cronkite with me. And she just has horror stories in Southern California of some athletes that treated her poorly and just people in general. And again, I don't know if I had blinders on to some of it because I was just doing their job and just focusing on the job, but nothing overt, nothing that came at me like you don't belong or just being treated. A lot of times it's very subtle. It's just being treated poorly. And when you're new in a role, and some people just don't want to deal with that. And, I don't remember getting any pushback. And certainly I was very focused on what I wanted to do and really not anyone stopping me, hopefully. So if I got any kind of warm response, I didn't pay attention to it.
The corollary and follow-up question is, and it's interesting where you took that question, was that I think the implication is, even as you were treated well, you didn't have a female mentor around who was 10, 15, 20 years older to help in that way if anything happened, or just to show you the ropes. But now we are, fortunately, 15, 20 years removed from that time. Plus, as you see younger female reporters coming into the areas where you're working, do you see them looking to you for counsel, thoughts, advice, guidance? And if so, how do you manage that role?
Yeah, I do. And a lot of them do reach out to me, or we just, how it is in media. You're all kind of chit-chatting or being around. And I hope a lot of it's just by example, because sometimes people, they may not want to ask something like really pick your brain when you're just sitting waiting for a press conference to start. But the good news is there are a lot of women in those roles and they are assimilating. And I think also being treated well. There's all there's digital platforms, and I just got done doing an Arizona Cardinals show with a young lady, Danny Sirac, who does a great job as the Cardinals reporter. And I watch them and what they're doing, and they're doing a fantastic job. I certainly am happy to do that, especially in my role at Cronkite. And I get a lot of questions about how do you juggle things, or how do you handle this, or how do you handle stress and things like that. And I still don't have the magic formula all these years later, but it's just kind of day by day. But the one thing is, you have to love what you do. And we've all met, you guys, even as males, you meet a lot of young men that come on. There's a group of people that sometimes they want to be on TV, or they want to be that person, but you have to love, there's a lot of non-glam moments in sports, right? I had one person shadowing me, a young man, say, I'm doing baseball and you have your earpiece in the entire game because you're trying to chime in or and he said to me, "Oh, you're here the whole game and you listen to the whole game." And I said, "Yeah." So it's not just about being on TV. I mean, you quickly see who's serious about it. And that's really male or female, right? But you have to love it. And some people end up going into news or entertainment or doing something different. But if you want to do sports, as you guys know very well, you lived it for a long time. It can be a lot of sacrifice. And so that's something I definitely tell young men or women.
Let's take a quick break.
Listeners, Dennis and I have a lot of experience with friends, people that we know who have found success on their back nines.
Yeah, one of them's one from grade school, a guy named Michael who was connected to Che Brands. And the founder, Chase Glick, one time weighed 350 pounds at 23 years old. Lost a ton of weight, realized during that weight loss journey that he missed out on his social life. And when he got back into the social life in that world, he didn't want to compromise that new healthy lifestyle. So he realized the Better For You market was growing, but did not understand why no one had created Better For You spirits. So he set out on a mission to create a line of Better For You zero sugar, low carb, plant-based spirits. Those Better For You products include zero sugar, low carb, low calorie flavored vodka, and ready to drink cocktails, coconut mojito, lemon drop martini, zero caffeine vanilla espresso martini. Visit cheproducts.com for more.
The Back Nine podcast is brought to you in part by Three Bridges Consulting. And look, I'm sitting across from one of the founders. At their core, Three Bridges are storytellers. They bring your brand to life with high-quality video and rich still photography, and they can help elevate your brand by finding the right distribution channels for the content they produce. So visit threebridgesconsulting.co. That's the number 3, bridgesconsulting.co for more.
Now back to the show.
That's a good jump off point for our next topic is how difficult was it? Because some of us transitioned out because of all the things you just said. It's not great for your family life. It's not as glamorous as people think when you're covering late night sports and you've got the family at home. You've transitioned. You have a family, 2 kids in high school now. So talk about that journey. And we don't need to focus too much on the back nine, but it is the name of the show, Jody.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, and I look back and maybe the best way I can reference this is just that I have a friend who also works part-time in this market, and she and I were close. She's a little bit younger than me. Her kids are, I want to say 6 and 8 or something like that. And she has been more part-time since they've been little. And I think about that moment that like my kids were 3 and 5. I was always full-time, but it was when my Diamondbacks role changed and our network went from 70 or 80 games to 150 games. And there were personnel and staff changes, and I was kept on. And it was a sad day because 2 of the 4 of us on air were not going to be kept on and 2 were going to carry on. And it was just a call. I was at my son's kindergarten lunch. I was volunteering at lunch when I could. And it was a call from, I'm going to get emotional now, Mark Rita, who passed away in May. He was a great mentor to all of us here. He's a long time producer and TV man here in sports. And he said to me, "You're going to do a lot of baseball and it's going to be life-changing. Like your schedule is going to change." And I thought about how a lot of people would have probably not. They probably would have had more questions and maybe even said no. And maybe even said, "I don't think I can," and for whatever reason, I felt really sad for my friends that were not going to be staying. I was grateful that I was, and I just went forward. And I guess that's how I've approached this. And I wanted that opportunity. I wanted to do more. So I felt like that was a big reason why I liked having the stability of the job, especially in a volatile time, which it's only gotten way more volatile this last probably 4 or 5 years or 10 years. And I thought of my friend because she's home with her kids a lot more. And I thought maybe she would have said no to that. And there have been times I thought maybe should I have said no? I have missed a lot with my kids, but I've also been around a lot for my kids too. But there are chunks, during the baseball season. But it also changed my career because when you're on TV every night doing baseball, it's probably one of the more unique jobs. And we have a half-hour show that we would do every night. And so it's basically became being on TV every night for a long time, 30 minutes pregame and postgame and all that. And so it when I look back, and that was 11 years ago now, it changed my life mostly for the better. There was change at home. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my husband always being there. He had a much more flexible schedule. He was working at the time. He worked at Arizona State at the foundation there. And then he was in commercial real estate. And he also was coaching the kids. He was always there for the kids. He was always the one given the nightly schedule. That's what gave me the confidence to really do it also. Maybe that's the biggest chunk that I left it for the end. But I would have had to have said no if I was a single parent or if I had a husband who was traveling or doing other things.
It's good. I think one of the keys and one of the follow-ups is that you've just always loved what you do. You've been doing the same job roughly from the front nine to the back nine. There's no like major transition in that, but it says a lot about finding what you really love and what your passion is. And then your family works in around that. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
It does. And I think it's passed on to my kids. Having a senior, he wants to get into sports media. He is the quarterback. He wants to go play. He's going to go play in college somewhere, and was at a young age pretending to interview me and pretending to be ASU quarterback through the years. And it was very cute and all of that stuff. And now he interned over the summer at a radio show. I don't know. Maybe it would help if Connor, that's my son, had, if it was like computers were very close second or pre-med or something, but there doesn't feel like there's any close second here. It's competitive. There's not a lot of money, at least early on. And really, there's not a lot of money unless you've had that longevity. But again, it's about what you love to do. So I'm not very practical. You guys have heard the saying, it's not work if you love what you do. I disagree with that. It's always work because you're away from your family and you should be compensated. You don't want to dread going to work because we all have to work and we all have to make a living, but you want to like what you're doing when you go do it.
For you, how you like what you're doing, the excitement that gets you going in the morning, how is it different for you now than it was when you were that 21-year-old as a first-time radio reporter in Phoenix or a 23-year-old TV reporter in Buffalo?
I know in the beginning, and I don't know if this is unique to me, I see a lot of really confident kids now, but I don't know if scared is the right word, but apprehensive. Everything was like plotting out everything very carefully. What's going to come my way here? And then I went to New York. When I went to Buffalo, I remember getting the job and thinking, oh gosh, I don't really know how to edit. Are they going to ask me to edit? I quickly found out that no, they weren't. Oh, thank God. I don't really know how to do a lot of the technical stuff. Okay, you just want me to talk about sports. That's cool. But yeah, my prep hasn't really changed, but it's just the other unique thing and working in the same market for a long time is that, yeah, a lot of it comes naturally because I have a lot of the history and the relationships here in town. So it does become easier to do all of those things, but you just have a whole different perspective. And it's nice. I remember when I was younger watching Linda Cohn or Leslie Visser, and I remember thinking, I want to have all that knowledge. And now when I tell young people, I can't give you all that in this course or in one day or even in 6 months or a year, but you have to work toward it. So that means just working, gathering that knowledge and making those relationships count.
I think that's what's so impressive about you, Jody, is how credible you were at a young age, what you brought to the table when you just said you wanted to learn about hockey. Like a lot of people were out so quickly is because they were outed as like phonies, right? They were outed because they didn't have the chops to be able to talk about sports and every sport, because you're right. It's not about just looking good. It's about knowing your stuff. And I think it was harder when you came in to be a woman trying to do it because you were being looked at and potentially criticized for not knowing stuff, right? Where we would have gotten maybe a little more space or more slack than you would have. People were trying to find a way to poke holes in your game. And to your credit, you stayed as well as anybody in the business and have done a great job.
It's interesting. That word phony is like you do when you arrive there, especially Buffalo, a great sports market. And there's a fear of, I don't want to be that person. I have to fit in with these people who A, have been working there, but B, a fan base that they really know their stuff. That was what was interesting about hockey. I was able to dive in. I felt like the more technical, the better, because that's what fans in Buffalo wanted. And it also helps when you're in the playoffs. Everybody's dialed in. Then you come out here to Arizona, and early on we were hearing, so here it's like Florida Girl, then Buffalo and Stanley Cup. And we were talking about certain matchups and techniques and different. And then coming out here, people were still new to hockey. And my bosses were, we're going to talk about, vocabulary. We're going to teach people here about hockey. And it's not really that way anymore, but it's still a little bit like, okay, now I got to zoom back out. Let's go big picture. What are people going to be interested in? Keep your eye on what people are interested in versus your own personal, look how smart I am. Because there's another thing in this business that's troublesome is then you can be like that and look how smart I am person. And no one wants that either.
Great stuff, Jody. It was really good to have you. And boy, you haven't changed. You're still the authentic, fun, happy person that I remember from, we know how long ago because you already said it, a couple decades ago, but you haven't changed at all. It's so great to have you.
Great to see you guys. And I still remember my desk over there, with the old phone. I tell my kids there used to be like a phone at the desk with the buttons.
They're like, what?
And I have great just working those Bills games and everything with you. And Josh, of course, seeing you out there. And it was really, I truly mean it. Dennis, for being my boss, you were amazing and set a great foundation. I was able to jump off from there with such a good feeling. And Josh, you were part of the community there that made me feel really welcome. So I feel like it started there. So thank you guys.
We all got our starts there and we're on to warmer climates.
Yeah. Jody, you've just lived to the tops of your potential, and it's fantastic to see that. So congratulations on what you've done.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. If I get down to Florida, I'm going to give you guys a holler.
Yeah.
We'll see you at a Panthers game in January. That's a plan for sure. Thanks, Jody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right. That was tremendous. She was everything I thought she'd be. What makes her so special, she's authentic. If you want to be good at whatever you do, front nine or back nine, and you have that kind of authenticity, there's something to be said for that.
My takeaway from talking to Jody, first of all, is how consistent she has been. She could easily be that person that we knew years ago, right? Because she's just been that authentic person. But she came to a crossroads, and she talked about that very articulately, and she made a choice. And it happened to be that it was staying on the same path. We talk about transitions all the time. Sometimes a transition is not necessarily doing something different,
right,
but looking at yourself, analyzing the situation, and saying, this is what grounds me, and I'm going to figure out a way to do that. Now, there was not necessarily anything traumatic in that, but like a lot of people, she had a choice, especially mothers who are working often wrestle with that choice of, well, am I going to stay in what I'm doing, or am I going to stay home with my kids at a time when they might need me? It's totally not fair across genders. But women face that more than men. She had a great supportive family that allowed her the opportunity to be able to make a decision that worked for her, and she was intentional about it. And I think that's important to recognize too.
I think also following what you've always loved. I stopped loving it. I still liked sports, but I didn't like the job anymore. And I love that she said that even though it's a job, she still loves it. And that's why she stuck with it too, right? If you're that lucky and you start at 21 years old with something you love to do, and you can continue that through having kids and through your family, that's just going to make you a happier, healthier person, right? You don't need, to your point, you don't need to go through some massive job transformation if you find that thing. So it's the front nine to the back nine, staying happy with what you're doing.
Great golfers can be good on both the front nine and the back nine, right? And they win tournaments when they do that. I think the other thing she talked about was when she first came into our atmosphere, she had an attitude of wanting to learn, and she still has that attitude. And I think that is something that's really important on the back nine too, whether you're consistent or whether you're making a change, is being open to continuous learning, continuing to want to improve oneself. In her case, she wants to continue to improve at what she has been doing for a couple of decades now. Other people want to try and learn at something different, but it's important to have that open mind to want to be able to learn about different things from different kinds of people, as a mentor, from mentors, and so on.
My favorite word, stay curious. It keeps you engaged with everything you're doing, whether it's your current job or whether it's looking for something new, is stay curious.
I didn't do so well at Amherst. So what can I tell you?
You didn't?
Just okay.
I thought you were pretty good.
Just okay.
And I liked the English sentence at the beginning. You threw those words out. I didn't have a translator. Did you tell us? You never even told us what it meant, any of that.
It meant what a great opening for two hosts such as us.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Loquacious.
Yes.
Oh.
Rhetoricians, speakers, orators. Yes.
Loquacious.
I think it's time for us to just say goodbye in a simple word and ask our fans to see us next time on The Back Nine.
Adios. Thank you so much for listening to the Back Nine podcast. Please follow and share and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or your preferred platform.
The Back Nine is produced by Janine Stella and recorded at Pixelworks Studios in Delray Beach, Florida.